This is GTR, Genesis Timeline and Roots. In a world of fractured stories, timelines buried, and truths erased, one project dares to ask the question, what if everything you thought you knew about history was wrong? This is GTR, Genesis Timeline and Roots. A 5,025-year simulated walkthrough tracing a melanated Adam back to 4000 BC. Over the last decade, new revelations confirm a black origin for humanity, from European vaults to tribal memory, Babylon to Britain. This is not just history, this is a challenge, a simulation, a movement. Meet the man behind GTR, Dr. Wilton MacDonald II, Caymanian, British, Jamaican, haplogroup E and stateless for 26 years. Now a global explorer, 119 countries and counting. A hedge fund lawyer, a UK chartered accountant, a seeker of the lost archives of our people. But the question remains, if all black people came out of Africa, does that make us only African? Or are we also European, Scottish, Native American, Jacobite Hebrew, Asian? GTR exists to answer that question. You've felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. A splinter in your mind. That splinter has brought you here, to GTR. Whites can't trace their roots before the 1800s. Where's ours? Where are the tribes? The languages, the kings, the queens, the true Hebrews? Where did the giants go? Where are the Neanderthals? Angels, aliens? Why do we speak in so many tongues? Was Babel just a myth? A memory? History has holes. Hollywood has lied. The system was never made for us to remember. Only 5 to 8% of people today are white. And what about the 1800 stories and postcards of the cabbage babies? But nearly all history books center their story. That doesn't add up. Atlantis, lost cities, vanished civilizations, or were they erased? Try GTR. Take the red pill and awaken to the truth of your ancestors. Or take the blue pill and keep dreaming a fantasy. GTR, a simulated walkthrough of Black Hebrew history and eschatology. This is the beginning of remembering.
Well, hello, Cayman. This is GTR, Genesis Timeline Roots. I'm your host, Dr. Wilton MacDonald II, and I'm pleased to present this episode 25. And we have covered over so much material with our esteemed guests like Reverend Mapunga, briefly PLO Lumumba, and some other Pan-Africanists and journalists. In episode 25, we're going to be looking at some of those holes and gaps, being that I'm now at another university. At the grad level, you look for research gaps, and I've found quite a few. The course that I'm pursuing it's establishing my own history and creative writing. And it's something that I will draw from GTR, draw from all of my prior experience and knowledge in genealogy, and just taking a look at some of these research gaps. In last episode, when I was interviewing Dr. Valerie O'Neill, we were talking about the family story. And this is a great background to what I'm going to say, because this course at Cambridge is focusing on creative side to my story, detailing the family history and story. And we were discussing with O'Neill, Dr. O'Neill, the composition of her family. And I just wanted to again touch on my story. I used many websites and databases, from MyHeritage to 23andMe to Family Tree DNA, pretty much so many, Ancestry. And I will show you the profile of what the DNA companies are saying about my own heritage. So we have seen this before, and this is version 0.95. This is the first version. When I signed up 5 years ago as a candidate for testing, I have tested and even utilized now independent labs for the DNA and research that I'm doing leading up to another higher doctorate degree, looking at the working hypothesis, what was the haplogroup, the default haplogroup of Europe and the UK prior to the 1800s, or as a GTR calculator will spit out, the 800s, roughly 200 years ago, trying to establish the default haplogroup. I'm an E, and I will be completely impartial here, but I'm an E, and the other default result would be R. So whether it's R or E to be the default haplogroup of the UK and Europe based on the candidates that have joined my project. So here it is. We have version 0.95, right? And this is the first test that I completed was on MyHeritage. And here it informed that I'm basically 8%, they call modern day European. I am, this is over 50% Asian. Don't know how that happens if half of 100 is 53. I guess that's the new math. My mom is full Indian. My dad has no Indian DNA at all, and that's confirmed on the same site. But according to these people, Asian, that makes me 54.3% Asian. I'm just roughly 40% African, that I know, with Nigerian being a large number, and then Irish, Scottish, Welsh, sort of 8. Now, once family, this site, this MyHeritage site was taken over by Family Tree DNA. Its headquarters is in Tel Aviv, so it's a Jewish company. The minute that this, and MyHeritage is owned too by a Jewish group, but still, this was good fair reporting. But the minute that the takeover occurred, my stats changed drastically. So again, that's the new math. My mom is still 100% Indian, and so half of 100 is less than 40, is 38.8%. That's the new math. Half of 100 should be 50%, but they call it as 38.8%. I no longer identify as European. That's out the window. But Nigerian went, as you say, from 30% past 50%. So roughly 60, almost 2, so 62% African. Not a problem. That's what they call it. And roughly call it 60-40. So 40% Asian, around 60% African. Now let's look at another company. So in Ancestry, goes back to that version 0.95 of MyHeritage. So they're telling me that I am from some West Midlands in the UK, about 8%, and I am Indian, spot on. When you combine the numbers, 26 and 24 gives you 50%. So yes, that's the correct math for Asian. And so roughly gives you rounded, you have 10, 40, 50. 10%, let's say white, you refer to it as Caucasian. 40% black, which I now define in my own right based on all the information I've amassed and gathered to be African, but also Black Hebrew. As Joshua Mapunga said, Africa is more Jewish and Hebrew than even the state of Israel, as far as its roots and culture, more than Islam. And we may say Islam or Mormonism, the same 200-300 years old. Muhammad, where he was, Prophet Muhammad, bless his soul, that would be 600s AD, but then GTR calculator, the 600s, really the 1600s. So I don't know where with Islam, it's likely to be around 200 to 300 years old, and Africa is either Muslim, white Christian, or custom tribal, their own religion. In some respects, today practicing Jews in Ethiopia. But again, as Joshua Mapunga pointed out, and our previous panelists and researchers like David Wakaza from Kenya, is that Africa has a lot of deep and roots, which this program is about, deep connections and roots. And Africa shows the traditions, the naming, the ceremonies, the Shabbat goes back to ancient Jewish times. So that 40%, 50% granted is Indian, 10% would be Caucasian, 40% would be a combination of African, Hebrew, Jacobite, Scottish, melanated, true sons of the planet. And going back just 200 years ago, and that's how I'm calling it, and GTR has set that out. Now, along the way, and this is confirmed, my composition, so now we know, there have been some pitfalls. And let me just say what I mean by pitfalls. There has been cases that I call orphan files. And you say, well, Dr. McDonald, what is that? What is that? And I will show you in a minute what it means, what I'm referring to as orphan files. Doing this new research project, I know that it's a difficult one to call. We have really two types of the testing. We would say that there would be autosomal testing, which those scientists, represent 2% of the entire genome. And that's, again, 2%. That's the superficial testing that people do in the standard test, the 23andMe, the African ancestry, which is very limited, only tests like 8 DNA markers, extremely limited. I took that and I showed up as Gabonese, and I have no Gabon relatives at all. And it's the closest one in time, only 5 generations, roughly 120 years, 150 years max back in time. And that will show maybe who you are, who your family members are, and where they originated, where they're from. But this whole question about 150 years, given that there was this alleged cloning and things that took place in Europe, we just don't know who our true ancestors are. My wife being Polish in Europe is not really Polish. As again, we can see here in this painting, the Moorish quadrille, which will forever remain my backdrop, shows the 4 Moorish kings. And again, Moor is a misnomer because this painting in Dresden, Germany today, not on public display, shows nobles and kings in Germany, in Poland, Lithuania, Sweden, and all of them really existed roughly 300 years ago. So this, for me, when my wife talks about being Polish, not really Polish at all. During my search, I found that there's orphan files. And what are orphan files? Orphan files would be situations where my parents who are registered on the DNA sites, them, and they're showing up. I am showing up, sorry, as a match, and neither parent is a match. So I am showing up as a match. So I just label it as an orphan because really one parent should match. And you look at these files, I have hundreds, and I have copied at least 249. There are hundreds. There's more than 800 of these cases that I've documented. But the strongest ones, the ones that I just took note of, we have surname Sharp. We have surname, and that's chromosome 9. We have, and it's usually the chromosome 9 that is impacted in all of these results, where I am matching someone at a fairly high level. It's more than just 7 or 10 centimorgans of DNA. It's beyond that. So I'm matching, and neither parent is a match. Now, I know that there are issues when it comes to genetic. I'm not a geneticist, not a scientist, made that clear on the show before, but I know that people may have genetic diseases and problems. So you may not be able to establish some match. That's common sense. My parents, myself, we have no genetic disorders whatsoever, like at all. And so people, well, maybe you get a read on one, and it's because of some issue with a disease. We have surnames Richardson, Hazley, Newitt, Newall, and mostly from the UK, but also USA. We have Kimberlin, we have Cooper, we have Bell. Then there's a Scottish name, of course. We have some McDowell. We have a few McLaren. We have a Bergstrand. We have an Emberton. We have Daniels, Johnston. We have Harris, Patterson, Murtaugh, O'Neill, Richardson, Meyer, Enox, Soul, Worthington, Patterson, Boyer, Miller. We have Dubois, Norris, Murphy, Bredmeyer, Payne, Edwards, Fairley, Dobell, Jacob, Ross, Presley, Landry's, Hughes, Merrill, Kirkland. We have Kostka, Mortley, Bennett, Telford, Gibbard, Gregg, Eggsling, Jones, Burridge, Hall. We have even Potts, and that's my dad's mom's name. We have Davis, and that's a shocker, Potts. My dad's mother was Daphne Potts, and I'm matching persons, and my parents, neither parent is a match at all. So it makes me an orphan, and clearly I'm not an orphan. And the same DNA site, they have encoded my parents' DNA, and they confirm that they're my parent. In terms of centimorgans, if you need to know, you have like a person, if you're doing a test and testing yourself, that'll be about 7,000 centimorgans. If you are up with a parent, it's about 3,000 to 3,500 centimorgans. If it's a grandchild, like my kid is matching up with my parent, half of that, so roughly 1,500 to 1,700 centimorgans. There you go. And a significant match in the DNA world is anything that's well over 10, clearly over 10, and the DNA companies up it, they increase it every year. So now it's beyond 15, in some cases 20 centimorgans. And that's distant cousin, but nonetheless, that it would be considered a match, a material match. We have Woolhouse, we have Knight, we have Wilkinson, Heyman, Hollowell, we have Velez, Burke, and again, different ethnicities, Spanish, Hispanic, Indian, white, black, regardless. James, Robertson, we have Eagle, Hardy. These are all surnames, last names. Bradley, we have Rizpora, we have McGee, Brimlow, Cone, Monsigne, Nielsen from Denmark, Nichols, David, Smith, common name, Clark, Bartaw, Bradbury, Tulcher, Barry, Roan, Lewis, Kelly, Maryland, Bennett again, Bryant, Watts, Parker, Pilkington, UK, Cobley, McLean from Australia, Pfister, Pfistr from Germany, Pfister, Slovakian, then Mooney, Lowe, Kazim from the Middle East, Scarlett, Blanchard, Barreto, Robinson, Sanagan, Croyle, Scoggin, Ashurst. We have another McLean, Balch, Saar, Frost, McDonald. Interesting. And my dad is not even a match. Brewis, Williams, Collins, Warner, Chandler, Phillips, Coleridge, Allen, Battersby, Bernier, some French, even India. It's weird. Singh, mom was not a match at all. Wrigglesworth, Hines, Sedon, Ward, Weisel. Again, that's more English and Indian. And so those are all names. Just almost 300 of those are surnames of orphan files. And those are matches and situations where I am matching someone at a level of 10, 20, 30 centimorgans. Should be a nice match with a cousin, maybe fifth, sixth cousin, but my parents are not matching at all. There's absolutely no match. So I label those and collect them as orphan files. So there's clearly demonstrable cases that something is wrong. University time. So I'm back in university, 13th university. After all, the list of universities, a lifelong student. I think I can, wear that cap. And here, looking for the research gaps, the areas that will sort of dictate that, and tell us and demonstrate that something is wrong. Something is clearly wrong with the data, with our history. And I keep posting and showing that when you look at it, when you look at the evidence of the demographic data, and you see that when you look at the blacks, melanated people, we are easily the planet, half of the planet. When you look at the Caucasians, global demographic data shows that when you look at the Caucasians, we're talking about maybe 8%, about 8% of the planet, or depending on how you define, you have 8% of the planet that would be non-Hispanic whites. And I did a post on Facebook and social media today about the numbers, the verified numbers. You can look to the United Nations, and it's hard to flesh out because some of the information is just not available. But, you can go country by country, and there are like about 200 countries, and you can flesh those numbers out for yourselves. So we have a lot of mixed race people. We have people from the Middle East and people who are termed Hispanic. They're neither white or black. And then you ask yourself, where would those people come from, and what are their histories, what are their stories, that we need to know, and it's not sort of self-evident. So we move forward to another part of this segment presentation.
This is GTR, Genesis Timeline and Roots.
What I wanted to say was that based on the 300 orphan files, mind you, these are files that I've found over 5 years from a number of DNA sites, from MyHeritage, from 23andMe, from Ancestry, where my parents' information has been clearly loaded. They are on the sites. They know who my parents are. They have reported to me that these are my parents. They have confirmed that. If you test yourself, you're 7,000 centimorgans. If you have a parent for a full parental match, we're talking 33,500 centimorgans. My child, half of me matching my parents, we're talking half of that number. So around 1,500, roughly 1,500 to 1,700 centimorgans. And that's where my kids are matching my parents. And a good match would be something like, 10, 15, 20, 30 centimorgans. So I'm matching with all of these persons, these individuals whose names I have read out, and they matching with me. Okay, there's no known, defects here. They're matching with me, but then my parents, in the 800 cases, and I've saved about 300 of the sort of biggest matches, largest matches. I've saved 300 files onto my computer. So this is clearly a door to be opened, and it warrants further examination as to why these people of different ethnicities, different countries, different surnames, in different, places of the world, why I'm deemed to be an orphan and neither parent, is a match. So we're turning this discussion now into a different subject. And being at Cambridge, I am just very, very, very interested in looking at the history of the college. So with this particular college that I'm at, which is on the grad course, there is a Madingley Hall. Who owned Madingley Hall? And this is one of the older buildings in Cambridge. So and to support the writing, I have created posts on the site on the owners of this, call it Madingley Hall. It was a man called Sir John Hind, and reminds me of my dad's grandmother. Her name was Hind as well, Lydia Hind, but a different spelling, Hind. Here you have Hynd. Now, the living descendant of this Sir John Hind is a Richard Elliot. That's today. And he had 2 siblings. We have Anne and Elizabeth. Elizabeth passed and Anne is still alive. But in order to get to his profile, I call it the electric shuffle, the electric slide. Blacks have this dance. They're celebrating electric slide. And in the family tree, it just meanders. So we are going past the surname King, from Elliot downwards to King to Cotton, and a lot of figures on my tree, even before I did this exercise this week, featured Cotton. But I don't agree with some of the portraits, because I had these people. The most senior Hind in the 1400s was called Ind. Now, I don't know if that was a name or just referring to something else. So that was the end of it. I didn't find John's profile, but I found this person called Ind Hind in 1470 back to England. But again, 470 GTR calculator, sit now 470 instead. And to support some of my work, this is the famous Barbados penny with the black king on its face, clearly a black king in 1792. We know that this is Charles II in England. They tore off the face. They always do that from all the kings. And you can make out his lips seem rather full, like mine. Charles II, clearly this was a monarch. Charles II, his statue is still in England, and face is gone. Like so many thousands of cases, not just the Sphinx in Egypt, but the faces tend to go, whether it be in Poland, like in this person, Prince Jersey's castle. I posted on Facebook that the faces in his castle in Poland, the 8 faces are gone. So the classic move. We're going to come to this in a second. This is John Harvard, but not John Harvard. This is a map of Jamaica. We all know the ancient map of Jamaica. Some of the McDonald's that I featured as part of my project, and a little commentary about haplogroup R's. Oh yeah, that's the most famous McDonald, the Honorable William Hugh McDonald, who turns out might be a haplogroup R, but the haplo R's, they have a problem in matching one another. So Houston, we have a problem. Houston, we have a couple of problems. And this guy, Romeo, I met him. He is an R as well, and of the RCD haplogroup. So the supposed King Somerled haplo. Faces removed. When I said faces, this photo I took in my trips to Tunisia, Algeria, and they just take off the faces on images, gravestones. Hey, but that's one face they never removed. This is taken in the Royal Castle in Cardiff, Wales, what Romans looked like. And those are clearly some brothers. Big noses, big lips. This exists today in Cardiff, Wales. And that's the hallway in Cardiff. Visited a few years ago. Oh, remember I said about the castle, Jersey's castle. Here it is. I've taken this photo. Nose just happens to pop off. And even some of the mouth just pop off. Books on these cabbage babies is written by Guy Anderson, who I interviewed. The spooky book that by Mind Unveiled, people who don't want to be seen. They're writing about it. Oh, Dr. Marie Charles, my absolute favorite, written more than 25 books on Black history and showing records and how Blacks were transported to the West. And we all know that, Blacks now even came into Africa. Evans, why you think Africa today the Africans speak so many languages, the European languages, most notably French.
This is GTR, Genesis Timeline and Roots.
So let us now just go into a deeper dive into some of the universities. We all know, like, if you have to list maybe 3 universities in the world as the top schools, comes to mind Cambridge, of course, Oxford, and Harvard. So in order of the age, and of course, the oldest in the world is the University of Bologna in Italy. And that is supposed to be the oldest university of them all. Now, when you look at, first, let's just take the youngest. Let's just take Harvard. According to even the university, I'm not even going to cite, another external sort of source. Let's just go straight to the horse's mouth. This is at Harvard, the 3 lies, the statue of 3 lies. So we know from even talking to people who attended the university itself that the man who is seated on this image and the statue is not John Harvard. The 3 lies. This isn't John Harvard, and John Harvard wasn't the founder of Harvard University. So let's go through it. We don't know what it says here, that there are no living representations of John Harvard. Oh my goodness. You mean true? Here, this image was created by Daniel Chester French in 1884, just the other day. Now, John Harvard wasn't the founder. It was actually, the colony, the government, the colony, the Massachusetts Bay Colony. So it was really the local government. And the year, it was not founded in 1638. It was in 1636. So these are the, say, three lies. And see, everybody is smiling ear to ear about this. And they touch his feet, that, the color has changed on the man's foot, at least the left foot. And we don't know what he looked like. So is there anything about his background? And I cite Wikipedia. I know that Wikipedia is not the gold standard. And let me make this very, very clear. I don't want to have to say it again. But because GTR is examining so much and so many of these gaps, these research gaps and problems that I'm finding in the historical records, it really labels all and pretty much all sources as suspect. Now, Wikipedia is the global online encyclopedia, and it's not recognized. If you're doing a proper, research or paper or dissertation, you're not going to cite Wiki. I get it. But for the purpose, for expedience, for just the efficiency of going through sources, because there's still some vetting on Wiki. You can't just go in and just put a page up. You have to even have a certain amount of credibility before you're deserving of a page on Wiki. And you have these curators all over the world that volunteer their time, and they would strike down and edit things. And if you try to edit without permission, you get banned from even using Wiki. And information is changing so rapidly that when I was growing up, I loved encyclopedias. But the encyclopedias, by the time you print them today, that information is stale dated. So what do we know about John? He was born and raised in England, Southwark, Surrey, the fourth of 9 children of Robert Harvard. And look, there is no hyperlink, just a Robert Harvard, a butcher, a tavern owner, and Catherine Rogers, a local native. And her father, Thomas Rogers, served as the Borough Corporation's counsel with John Shakespeare. Again, the saying that Shakespeare was never one man, and like Tesla was not one man, but many. And he was baptized, went to grammar school. He attended the University of Cambridge, Emmanuel College, 19th of December, 1627. He was awarded a BA and MA in the 1600s. Now, between Cambridge and Harvard, like the two best universities in the world, there are no images. There are just no portraits of the man. So we're led to believe that this would have been, if he indeed existed, he too would be a brother. He would have been black, melanated. That's the GTR conclusion. Now, you say that is Harvard, and so the jury is out as to the founder. Well, we know he's not a founder, but the main contributor, patron of the university, so bears his name. What about other universities? We could turn to even Cambridge. Let's know about Hugh, major contributor. Says here that nothing is known of Balsham's background. The dispute over his election alleged to have been servile birth. His name suggests a connection with the Cambridgeshire village of Balsham. And you look at the main page, Cambridge, he is like one of the first figures noted in the founding of the colleges. Now, in 1209, this particular person featured in the founding of the colleges. So there's really nothing. Let's check the genealogy sites. I found a Thomas de Balsham, most likely French connection, and this guy died around the same period of the other bishop, Hugh. Balsham. So what do we know about this Balsham? He too, this one, Thomas de Balsham, born in 1232, Cambridge. Father was Lord Ralph, 1207. There is a grandfather, James. No surprise. There is always peters out. So we have these short trees, and I'm going to get to the electric slide comment, but we have 3 generations and then no more. From here, we can go down to maybe a Sir Ralph. A surprise, no male descendants. A Dame Purnell, 1285, a daughter, and then the line dies. We expect to have some trees that will go all the way down and show direct descendants. But this electric slide, tree goes down, it shifts to the side and comes back, shifts to the side. And these are terminal roots. So the tree sways. And I've noticed this in hundreds of cases, especially when we're dealing with white ancestral tracing, the electric slide, call it electric shuffle, and never a case where we can go straight down. So with Cambridge, the history, the Balsham, there's some holes there. I can't find much of the history. Now, how about Oxford? We have this Theobald Etampe, Etamps. I think there's some French, origins there. And this guy is connected and was connected with Oxford. What does it say about his life? It has been reconstructed by a Bernard Geneste. It says he was born before 1080, medieval schoolmaster, theologian, and hostile to priestly celibacy, the first scholar to have learned at Oxford, and a forerunner of the university. He was probably educated at a Chartres Cathedral School. No definite history. This guy could have just dropped off from the sky. And of course, the depiction here is one of a white guy. His arrival in Oxford. And that's what I said, if we're talking about, this is a postcard and a depiction, it was prepared in the 20th century, 1907, by a C. Bowley, right? Showing his arrival at the university. And this is like 1,000 years ago. And just now they're getting around to showing this image of him speaking and teaching and lecturing and being a student at Oxford. He was a medieval schoolmaster. But if all those persons were depicted correctly, we have a number today of not even, say, 8% of the population being white. Houston, we have a problem. We have many problems, Houston, and there's a disconnect. So whoever painted this is just nonsense. And if we go back at the history, University of Oxford, this is going to be, there was no official papal bull. The Oxford University's foundation date is unknown. A lot of holes, they don't know. Things that are missing, and maybe we don't know. Well, let's go and see if I can find a relative, Jehan Entempes. And he was French, 1075. Okay, daughter, the electric slide. So no sons, but I'm not sure if this guy was related then to the other founder, Theobald. I tried to research, did not find any genealogical information on Theobald. So there is clearly an issue in telling the story, an issue in connecting the dots and those profiles.
This is GTR, Genesis Timeline and Roots.
I wanted to share this because on the particular hall where I am attached to the Madingley Hall in Cambridge. We have a lot of nice curated photos and portraits. We have the Madingley Hall in 1812, nice rich history. And yes, now this electric slide shuffle. The family tree owners with Sir John Hind. Now, I have here the issue with trying to piece together, sways back and forth. The current living descendants and owners would be at the bottom, but we have a few terminal lines. We pass through Hind, we shift to the right, we head to the Cottons, and then we slightly shift to the left. There's a Cotton Rowley, and then we have the King, surname King, comes up, and we shift back to the right. We don't have really, even in the royal family charters and the trees, we have this swaying back and forth, back and forth. And there's really because these lines are terminated with no male heirs or no issue, as they say, no issue, no kids. And then it just terminates. But we need to account for the whites, which are limited because all the portraits are, of whites. Even though some of these coats of arms, they have been remastered. We know that we've seen Dr. Marie Charles. A lot of her works and books will show the Moorish heads on a lot of these crests. Here we have some of the coats of arms for John Hind. We have portraits, whether you want to believe or not. We have some of those portraits. I believe Francis was his son. And the question is, if we had all of these portraits in 500 years of history, we would have obviously more whites today. It's just commonsensical. The global population was around 700 million people 300 years ago. When this painting was done in Warsaw, Poland, that being the King of Poland, his headpiece is so rich and glorious. The host king, black man, 1706, and that's the host king in Poland. So in the 1500s, they were the United Nations. They tell you that there was only about 700 million people alive totally. What happened to the population? And how come the numbers remain so small? And what happened and what happened in the fair-skinned sort of people? They obviously mixed with melanated black people because we have Hispanics and we have Middle Eastern in the MENA region, North Africa, Morocco, Tunisia. And they have told me in person, they can't eat the wheat, they can't take the sun, they need genetically modified crops. 200 years ago, their ancestors were black people, were called Berber blue people. And then the faces, thousands of faces taken off on the old statues all over North Africa. So there is a lot of evidence pointing the way that there were black people. So how come we have so few whites, and where did the fair-skinned people come from? Obviously, you need a mixture, a combination to produce them. And they're telling me that I remind them of their ancestors, not thousands of years ago, barely 200 years ago, that I remind them of their Berber blue ancestors. And I've seen images of Morocco. Casablanca was rebuilt. I visited Rabat and Casablanca, and I saw some images, not as plentiful as I saw in Tunisia, Algeria. Some of those images were just sheared off and cut in two. But I did see old paintings in Morocco. Casablanca was destroyed, 80% was rebuilt. The city is not even, that city was rebuilt. And here it is, we have in the Rabat, we have the ancient castle. I saw a lot of relics, but faces were just sanitized, not there, but they were really in abundance in Tunisia and Algeria. the old Roman villages. And so they have that history. But in the old Moroccan art, I've seen people, farmers in the 1800s, in the late 1700s, and they're clearly Black people. This was the only image. This was the only image that I found in Rabat. You can't make out the profile of the man, but this was the only image with a face in Morocco. And my research of Morocco, here's a average Moroccan man, 1800s. I found the image I was trying to look for. It's an image of an Moroccan man tending to his field. And in the country, in Morocco, is a Moroccan man, Black. And this is in the, call it mid to late 1800s. Someone from Morocco. Back to Madingley Hall, the slide and shuffle family tree. So we go from Hind all the way down to past Cotton, a bit of the Rowley, even Brewis, and the Elliott surnames shifting side to side. The electric slide, portraits that we just don't know, more portraits of family members, Cotton, again, we don't know, certainly very dignified looking, but we don't know, again, because of the numbers, just looking at the numbers. Okay, these are just the numbers. So we have a lot of the images that we know are just, call it whites, their history going all the way down. That's the Prince of Wales, other patrons and supporters. So we have the issue with colorism, of whitewashing, and the history that doesn't add up. We look at across the universities, we look at owners of properties, of halls, of buildings, and we are left with a lot more, questions than we have, answers. But I do love this image on the man from Morocco. My goodness, I'm just blown away. I just love it. Here is a man taking care of himself. It is such a lovely image of just a Moroccan man going about his day-to-day activities.